Hey there.
We are going to talk about a controversial topic that has sparked heated debate in the Bitcoin community. It's about removing the upper return limit, and it's going to be an interesting discussion because Zia and I are looking at it differently. I am rather strongly opposed to it, while Zia sees it as not a big deal. How about I start with my reasoning why I think it's a big deal, and then
Yeah,
you
you
respond.
could do that. We could do that. And I just wanted to say thank you for inviting me again. And it's a blast to be here. It's a lot of fun. I'm having fun with friends, like sitting and talking. That's cool. So let's just carry on with this conversation, and let's let people know what's it's all about. You could probably share a few slides or like screen shares to let people what's all the shenanigans about.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. It's going to be a fun talk. Do you see my screen? No, I don't think so. I think I need to.
I see the screen, but it's like
Oh,
it's rather wide and narrow.
oh,
So
yeah. So I will describe it. That would be the best thing we can do.
you could
There's a
probably
pull.
zoom in a little bit.
All right. My processing power. It will kill it. Oh, yeah. There
Yeah,
is
now
a
it's much
pull
better.
request. Yeah, by Peter Todd. Remove arbitrary limits on up return outputs. Pull request number 32359. Um, so it also has a link to a mailing list discussion that I also recommend that you have a look at that. I have already opened it, and I think it would be better if I switch to that right now.
Just in case you didn't notice, it's not on the screen anymore. So
Yeah, it was not. Now it should be, right?
yeah, it is.
Oh, yeah. There are reasons for why they are saying that they are going to remove this up return, and some of the concerning ones are mentioning that it.
Yeah, but
Uh,
Momo, maybe before like we dive into the like technical details,
mhm.
maybe we could tell people what's up return and how it works.
Oh, yeah,
So
maybe. Uh,
if
yeah.
you want me, I can.
I can.
Yeah.
What I can
So
say that is that our up return limit is currently 83 kilobytes, 80 to 83 kilobytes, and
bytes.
this bytes. Sorry, and this upgrade is going to increase it. It's just going to remove the limit because there are some projects that would require it, and this is not a consensus rule, and this is a policy as they call it. And for a more in-depth definition of what up return is, Zia, you are the best person to do it.
Yeah, it's well, it's I don't want to get like super technical about like what's an op return and like the Bitcoin scripts for transaction and things like that, but just consider that there's all sorts of operators, let's call them code operators, which are basically the instructions that let the nodes and the like the block, let's say, let the Bitcoin network know how to uh, actually reason and do a transaction. So these are called opcodes. And well, upreturn is one of the weirdest, strangest opcodes out there. So it's an instruction that just gives like, okay, there's a data, return it and just show it. And it's like, so I'm not really sure why it's there. So there has to be a reason, like Satoshi thought of this, and it's there. It's you can put arbitrary data in a Bitcoin transaction, and it's been there for a really really long time. So And just in case that you may not know about the history of it, so there's a few brief points that I need to mention. It would be like operator was the thing that was used years ago, still probably used a little bit for things like Omni protocol, where the Omni layer, where like tokens like Tether was like Tether transactions were being recorded on the Bitcoin network. So here's the whole transaction. There's a small piece of the Bitcoin transactions where you could put some kind of data in it. And like the Tether Foundation was putting the data here. And this was like before Tether was being used like on Ethereum or other like shit coins and things like that. So there was a small piece of data, a small place in the Bitcoin transaction that you could put arbitrary data, and Tether Foundation was using that, and probably a few others were using that too for all sorts of like crazy stuff. And they put data in it. And actually, years ago, like I think in 2014, 15, we actually decreased the up return limit to 80 something bytes because, well, it was possible years ago to do transactions on Bitcoin with zero fee. Like it may seem crazy right now, but it was possible to send a transaction in the Bitcoin network, and just for the reason that there was not much like Bitcoin transactions on the network, like even if you don't pay a fee, some miners would like take your transaction and put it in a block as some kind of a favor, probably. They just didn't care. So there's a transaction, let's put it in the block, and that's it. So there were all sorts of people who started putting all sorts of data in the up return for free and like increasing the blockchain size. So we were like, okay, this is probably not a good idea to let up return go. Like, I don't know if it was like 160 bytes or 120 bytes or something before. They decreased it to 80 something bytes. So this was like, there was some kind of a limitation back, like probably 7 years ago or something. And then we decreased that limit, or actually we made that limitation even more stricter, and we decreased the amount you can put arbitrary data and transaction up return. And now what Peter Todd is suggesting is that we could just remove the whole ceiling and let it go wild up until the block gets filled with up return, if there's such a use case and if somebody wants to pay all that fee for it. So that's basically it. You could probably show people on Mempool how does like an up return look like. I could probably share if you want. If that's not like,
Yeah, you can go ahead.
yeah. So I'm gonna share a screen, and I don't have transaction ready, but I'm just gonna wing it and try to find an up return transaction. So you could probably see the mempool right now here. If you can bring it on the screen, Momo. So here's mempool's website. It's not on the screen yet. Yeah, that's cool. So here's mempool.space, and they actually put some kind of a feature here called mempool goggles, where if you click on data, it will show up return. Oh wow, that's a lot of up returns. Or probably this is not only up returns, there is also inscriptions, yeah, but there are up returns too. So I'm gonna try to find a simple transaction, not inscription. So this is probably some kind of a simple transaction, and I think this is using the Omni protocol or something. So this is just like a simple transaction. There's a person sending about 0.76 Bitcoin, and they're sending it to this address, right? And they're burning Bitcoin actually on this address for this much, which is, I'm not sure, this is probably for Omni protocol or something like that. the burning this Bitcoin actually. And there's a place which you can see called upReturn, which is that placeholder for data, for arbitrary data. You can see it here. It shows it like nicely on Mempool Space website. And we can see probably what it says. It says gibberish, but this is probably encoded in some kind of format that these people who are doing this know about it and their clients and softwares. Like there is also one interesting use case that some people do. There's some kind of a shitcoin thing that Eric Voorhees launched a few years ago called Thorchain or Thor Swap or something like that. So what they do a swap for a transaction, like for Ethereum, let's say, to Bitcoin. And once they do that, they put the reference transaction or address into the operator. So you know that this is a transaction coming from Ethereum going to Bitcoin. So there's all sorts of crazy stuff that people do with operator.
Yeah, one of the famous ones is you can also include uh, Chancellor on the brink of second bailout on the operator,
Yeah.
right? Yeah,
If
the
we want to talk about those ones, like there's crazy ones. I think some people put the white paper
the
there.
white paper.
I
Yeah,
think some
yeah,
people, yeah. And I think there's like illegal data also on the blockchain
yeah.
like
There
this.
is.
Like I'm not sure what kind of illegal data, and I'm not sure that we can talk about it like here in the YouTube
Mm-hmm.
on YouTube. But it's like there's some like serious illegal data on the Bitcoin network somewhere in operator. So these will be all cool topics probably to delve into.
Right. Yeah, the issue I take with this pull request is that one of the intents, as also stated on the mailing list, is that for some developments, it is required to increase the ceiling. So let's remove it. So anyone who wants to implement something new, they can just be sure that their transaction is going to be relayed by nodes, and we are going to remove it. So if it is 100, if they require 100 bytes, as I think it is the ceiling requirement for BitVM, which is a non-monetary implementation that I personally do not want on Bitcoin. It's not going to change my Bitcoin experience. If anything, it's going to change it for worse. I don't want it on Bitcoin. It doesn't have any necessity. So why would, and we are going to make these implementations happen by removing it. So when we are opening this floodgate, it should remind us of something that happened, and we all went through, which was when inscriptions happened. Inscriptions happened. They flooded the Mempool. The transaction fee went crazy high, and we couldn't send a single transaction at 1 sat per V byte or even 5 sat per V byte. Fortunately, Bitcoin has this thing in place, which is fee. So when you want the block space, you have to pay the fee for it, which mitigated this issue. And probably that's one of my assumptions. The increase in Bitcoin price discouraged people to just write um, monkey pics and dick pics on the blockchain. So that's something that Bitcoin already has in place, but why put all the burden on it? It cleared the mempool, that's true, but we should pay attention to the fact that it wasn't coordinated um, action from the users, the node runners. Not everyone said that, okay, let's decrease the limits so the spam cannot get there. It was that probably the actors got tired or they didn't see any benefit in it and they didn't do it anymore. So there are some applications, then there are some implementations that they talk about, such as this BitVM, and one of the other ones is a proposal by Citria that I don't know what it exactly is, that also needs an increased block size, upper 10 size, and it facilitates that too. what other things can it facilitate? That's my main concern, maybe the unknown unknowns. Uh, when we activated SegWit, still things were good, but when on top of that we activated Taproot, there was a way to bypass this limitation on up return and make use of the SegWit discount and save dick pics on the blockchain, which was not something that I signed up for. We do not know what else it's going to activate. When it is by just increasing it by less than 20 kilobytes or about 20 bytes, we are going to enable a project, BitVM, which is like doing programming and running virtual machines on Bitcoin. Not necessary, not good for Bitcoin, not anything that anyone asked for. What other applications this slight increase is going to make? If it was something that, okay, there is a kind of quantum resistance solution that requires 120 bytes, and we can implement that, and the danger of quantum computers is imminent, so let's do something about it. I would have thought about increasing the limit manually, but removing it altogether without thinking about all the consequences to just make BitVM and Citria's proposal possible, that's not something that I want. And the last thing is that developers say that, okay, we are removing this in your implementation or in any kind of uh, Bitcoin node implementation you choose to run, such as Bitcoin knots. Um, you can change this limit yourself. But the problem is, again, during the inscription flood, it wasn't users who managed to stop this spam. The fact that it was costly eventually exhausted the spammers who wanted their dick pics on the blockchain. And I don't want to deal on something like this every year on the Bitcoin. And even if there are 10 nodes that relay such a transaction with a higher up return limit, it will get to the mempool of the miner that is incentivized to mine it. So all the participants have to agree on a lower limit so that the higher the projects that need higher up return size cannot operate if they turn out to be malicious, and we cannot predict that. I am sure Bitcoin developers are very smart. As smart as they were, Casey Rodemore came in and he probably had good intentions. I could not hear bad intentions, or at least I can believe that he didn't believe what he was doing was bad, um, and what he was doing was considered spam. But he found a way to uh, exploit well-meaning changes to make dick pics happen. So we never know what other things we are making possible with this. So these are my objections. Now, Ziya, why do you think it is not a big deal?
Well, it may be a big deal, but well, it definitely is not a big deal at this moment. So, like me and you both, we would probably completely agree that we don't want monkey pictures on blockchain. So that's like I don't think that you can find a sane person. Uh, well, like shitcoiners are not same people, so who would like agree that like it's a good idea to have like monkey pictures on the blockchain network. But that's not something that was actually facilitated by Upreturn. It is something that is facilitated by something that is deeply inside the rules of the Bitcoin protocol now, which is like the SegWit and like the witness data. So we cannot like find a solution for that right now at this moment. There's no way to fix this. There's a problem and it's like kind of unfixable. And everyone can just use actually and publish data on the Bitcoin network like that. So that we definitely agree upon. So what I'm thinking of that, and this is a big deal, but what is not a big deal is that, well, there's people talking about, like there's Peter Todd and others who are talking about, okay, let's just remove the limit on the op return, on how much data you could put in op return, so that, and the rationale is that so that people who are publishing data on the witness, which is not the best way to do it, and it's like probably kind of harmful for users who are running nodes, they would take that data and put it in up return. So this is the rationale. It does make sense for me. It may not be the best rationale out there because, like, as we discussed before the show, we don't see if there's enough incentive for those who are abusing the blockchain and putting data there. There's no incentive for them to take their data from the witness, which is cheaper to have it there, and put it on op return. So that I think is like, I don't know if I'm like reading into this like incorrectly or something. If anybody knows, like if I'm doing the like if I'm saying this incorrectly, please let me know. But well, there's no incentive for people to use that up return, even if it's not limited or anything. If the up return ceiling would be completely removed, still there's no incentive to do that. So what Peter Todd and some other people think is that, okay, there's like legit people, technical people who want to publish data. They don't want to publish the data on witness. They have to publish it right now. But if the limit is actually removed, now they can put it on up return. And well, although these people may be nice enough to do that, but that's not how things work. It all comes down to incentives, and they may not do that in the future, or others. Like if Peter Todd and others are making their decisions based on only few people they know and a few projects they know, that's like one of the worst kind of like rationales and reasonings, because like there's going to be so many people who will start actually start doing shit that they can do, which is like possible for them. Why do you do that? For the reason that I just can. Just that's enough for them. So there's going to be people, shitcoiners, and people from shitcoin projects, if they see that there's a hot market for launching assets and tokens and things like that on Bitcoin, they will come here and they will not use the up return because it's more expensive to use the up return. So why do Peter Todd and others think that up return would be, it would be a better thing to put all of this in up return? So the main thing is that, well, the main technical thing is something that is called a UTXO set. So what's that? I could probably share this picture from, yeah, let me show you this picture of a friend who sent this in their in a shared Telegram channel, where they show their how do you say that,
Couldn't hear you.
their node. Yeah,
Mhm.
they show their node, and well, we can see the node directories. So this would be like much easier to explain that like this. Okay, now people can see this. So this is how it looks like the directories, like for those completely non-technical people, these are like folders of your Bitcoin node. So you can see that the block data is like 696 gigabytes, which is like the main thing, like the whole blockchain. And there's something called chain state, which needs to be accessed quite quickly and fast. So the chain state is called the UTXO set. It is all the unspent outputs of the blockchain. So you have these on your node, and your node keeps track of these and needs to have access to them, and it probably loads most of them into your RAM, which is like quite an expensive resource on your uh, computer. And these are this is it, which is like 12 gigabytes. And people writing monkey stuff on witness data will make UTXOs that will not be spent forever because they are dead UTXOs. You cannot use them at all or spend them. They will sit here in the chain state forever. And this is a storage space that actually sits in a rather expensive resource of your computer. So storage actually is not that expensive. So you can have like terabytes of storage for SSDs or HDDs and use them and like easily for not that much of a money. But for RAM, which the chain state sits in, that's pretty expensive. So it's much more expensive than the storage, and it's much limited in size. So up return data makes it in a way that these data will be you will be the data for up return do not sit in the UTXO set. And that's quite nice because you could just ignore that data and not load it and don't like look at it at all. So that would make it much more efficient for people to run nodes, and probably for people who will be running nodes in the future. So that's the rationale for actually doing this up return thing rather than putting data on witness. But still, the same criticism still stands. It still holds true that we do not have any kind of an incentive for people to not to use witness data because it is cheaper to use witness data and to put data in the chain state, which is like the UTXO set, which also uses one of the most expensive resources on your computer. So that's basically what Peter Todd and the people like are talking about. And there's all sorts of shenanigans that you've actually referenced with the pull requests and like the crazy stuff happening for like banning people and having like some kind of from 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 the GitHub page and from posting comments and things like that. Maybe we could like get into that because that's
Mm.
going to be much more juicier, probably.
Yeah, Bitcoin mechanic. And something about chain state, I doubt that it sits on the RAM because, my previous node was 8 gigabytes of RAM at most.
Well, it
And
sits in fragments. There's like a
okay, right.
configuration
It now makes
probably.
sense.
So,
Okay. Yeah, yeah. And something I can say is that if I want to, as a sovereign node runner, want to run a full node, I need to keep track of and store the up returns too. And it discourages me from doing that. Of course, storage is not that expensive, but the inscriptions alone forced me to upgrade from a 1 terabyte SSD to a 2 terabyte SSD, which is a not very cheap upgrade. So scenarios like this kind of scare me. And about Bitcoin mechanic,
But
yeah,
we can't
he
do anything about that. That's the catch. We can't do anything about like inscriptions right now at this
yes,
moment. There's
yeah,
no
yeah.
way that we
The
can deal with
pure
that.
the cure is worse than the disease. That was the problem, that we couldn't do anything. And another illuminating point about that is that we didn't unite to kind of stop them. They just stopped because they have less incentive to spam the network. And
They
yeah,
haven't stopped completely. They're still
yeah, yeah.
working. Like,
But still, the mempool is very empty compared to those times.
yeah,
They
it's
are
compared to
100 times, literally one less populated and less bloated. Right, and Bitcoin Mechanic pointed out a conflict of interest between some of the developers and some of the proponents of this pull request. Jameson Lott, he is he's affiliated with several companies, including Citria, if I am pronouncing it correctly, and they have a proposal that requires more than 100 bytes of up return data, and he is a proponent of that. He is also a pro inscriptions, um, and when he pointed that out, that a pro inscription, pro DeepIC person is pushing this pull request, and I am worried that you have a conflict of interest with people who have gone on record saying that we are going to make buy your favorite Bitcoin developer. We are going to set so big nobody can run a node, and people like them, or people who uh, have the same shitcoiner ideas as them, are proponents of this pull request. And this raises questions: are they being paid by these people with conflict of interest, which makes them also not very ideal actors too? And when he pointed this out, they said that they blocked Bitcoin Mechanic, and the grounds was that GitHub, they blocked him from GitHub of Bitcoin Core. That GitHub is just for technical discussions, and the way that they handled the situation too was something that sparked the flame, that fanned the flames even more, and made the problem even worse than before.
well, I do agree with that reasoning that well, GitHub is for technical discussions, definitely, and it's like it's like let's say that we want to talk about, let's say you have a project that affects Bitcoin in a special way, and there's things happening that do concern your project. So if you go there and like probably try to justify some kind of a reasoning or anything, or just let people know what you think about, people will could actually consider that you are incentivized, and you know what I'm saying. So it's like you're the guy, or you're the people, or you're the group of developers who are interested in that thing, because it relates directly to what you guys do. So it does not make that much sense to actually talk about like if you're incentivized by something or not, and that's some kind of a fallacy, which I may not know right now, like from up the top of my head, which one of the fallacies and what's the name of it. To it's some kind of like a straw man or something like that.
Ad hominem attack,
And
when you attack the person instead of the idea.
no, ad hominem would be like putting names, but like stroma is like you take some kind of like a not directly related thing and
Yeah, yeah, and attack
try
that,
to
which is
argue
a
about
fear.
that rather than arguing about the main thing.
Yeah, yeah.
So it could be some kind of a drama or something like that. I'm not sure, or red herring or something. And I could see that like instead of like discussing about whatever it is, it should be discussed because that's the place for technical discussions. You go into some sort of like name callings, or I don't know, getting into drama and like all sorts of not the best way to criticize a project from technical perspectives, to do all sorts of things like that. So I'm not the biggest fan of I don't know, like Jameson Lop or Citria or something like that. By the way, Citria is like, if people don't know about that, it's, I don't know if it's some kind of a bridge using BitVM to bridge like Bitcoin to some off-chain or layer 2 protocols or something like that. And we're gonna probably hear more about such projects in the future, because like after BitVM was introduced, there's a possibility of doing all sorts of like layer twos on Bitcoin, which will publish some kind of a compressed data on the Bitcoin network itself. So there's going to be much more demand for these kind of things in the future, and it's probably a good time to be discussing these kind of things at this moment, because like it's gonna come up later, if not right now, probably soon. So yeah, so that's what going on with my opinion is this, like this is not the best reasoning to go there, start like talking about like you're incentivized. This is not the technical discussion. And if you do that in the Bitcoin dev mailing list, you're going to be probably considered spamming or something. And if you, I don't know what happened. Yeah, my screen went black for a moment. Yeah, so, and if you do that on GitHub, probably gonna happen the same thing will happen. And I think in any place that there's some kind of like an elite technical discussion happening, that needs to be like organized and everything needs to be clean and clear, that's not the best way. I know that it's not the best thing to block someone. That does kind of make it look really bad, but still, yeah.
Right. Okay. So, is there anything else that you want to cover with respect to the up return limit?
Well, there's all sorts of stuff, but and there's like, look at it. Like in the last few days, there's like, it seems like there's war happening in Bitcoin. Although, like, there's people talking about like, is this the next block size wars? Come on, I really want to tell those people, please shut up, because that's just like some kind of an engagement farming or something tactic. That was like like the block size war was like, basically it
A
was
hard
hard
fork.
fork that was contentious things happening, but this is just a change in some client policies, which you could actually just bypass if you want to do right now at this moment. You don't need to upgrade, you could just do it right now and bypass it by just submitting a big enough up return to the miners directly. You could do that right now. It's not a consensus rule. And it's so that's why I say it's not a big deal. It shouldn't be a big deal. We shouldn't make a big deal out of it, definitely, because that's going to take some valuable time and resource from all sorts of like developers or interested parties, and all like this is not a thing that people need to be that worried about, in my opinion. And if they are too worried, or I know there are some worrying things about it, but it's like you shouldn't block that people that easily. Probably that's something that's kind of worrying. And the other thing that is worrying for me is that this may not be the best way to fix stuff, but I could see the reasoning some too. But yeah, I don't want to this to make turn into a big thing or something. And I don't think it's going to turn into a big thing later in the future. But it's going to waste a lot of time that we could put into like covenants and stuff like that, and like probably getting out of the stagnation kind of phase that we have in Bitcoin for future upgrades, which would be a much more important topic probably to discuss.
Mhm. Something that seems to me that makes this important to me is that once we make this change, it becomes the norm for transactions to have this return of, for example, 100 bytes. Uh, then there is no way of going back. That's going to be very, very difficult to coordinate, if not impossible. So if right now there is a way to spam the network which requires 100 bytes of up return, it cannot happen, and it will be very difficult for it to happen, extremely difficult, because my normal node would not just relay that transaction because it says it's over 80 bytes. But when the norm is that any amount is accepted, then something even more controversial than Bitcoins can be run, and then there is no easy way to go back to the lower limit and make everyone agree. And a kind of a full consensus is required here, to go back and make it, for example, 99, so that 100 byte up return cannot go through. That
Yeah, I
is,
could probably create 2,000 transactions and send them to the Bitcoin network. And if I want to pay that much fee, but like I said, as an experiment, like consider that if I create like 2,000 transactions and put like upper 10 data in most of them, I'm gonna submit a quite of a large total up return to the block. And it's not gonna be the like it's not gonna have a huge difference, or actually any meaningless difference, any meaningful difference with removing the ceiling for upper term. So if somebody wants to publish a lot of up return on the Bitcoin network right now, the current situation of the network will not actually stop them.
okay. So I think we covered everything.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah. So thank you for coming on. It was a good and rather concise discussion about this very controversial topic.